So speaking of the internet, at the beginning of our story, it was the ARPANET. There weren't a lot of nerds, and TCP/IP had been around for a little while, but it hadn't been separated out into its two components for very long, and it wasn't actually made mandatory on the ARPANET until 1983. And we didn't see too much growth in the internet until towards the end of the 1980s and the 1990s for a variety of reasons, including ownership changes in the US, the popularity of TCP/IP as a technology in the academic world, the establishment of ISPs in the UK, general awareness of online services, and the rise of PC. So this is what PSS looked like in 1981. National coverage, but one of its weaknesses was that it didn't reach all high streets very easily. So providing to some locations was quite expensive. When BT first launched the service, they would typically sell connectivity. And that evolved into selling connections to networks. Generally, when you priced up a private network, you tended to ignore key elements to do with the running of the network and the management infrastructure to support it. This network providers could provide more cheaply because it was shared infrastructure for them. But most cost models ignored it. And what the commercial people in BT had to get over under the network providers is pushing a holistic costing model that tilted the argument in favor of the managed network. So as it evolved, the product evolved itself as a managed services network provider rather than a platform provider, and started to address corporate network sales. And that led to aligning resources with clients, forming customer-centric teams, getting a better grip of project management, improved commercial packaging, and much more of a requirements focus. The next stage was finding a low-cost way of extending the network to high street locations. This was achieved in the late 1980s, and the retail sector took this up in a very big way, and that reinforced this customer-centric approach. So, accessing the financial services market required a bit of a rethink. The financial services area were largely IBM dominated and required higher speeds and LAN services. Fortunately for BT, it acquired an outfit called TimeNet in 1991, and they offered technology based on frame relay for the core network, which offered a lower protocol overhead and therefore could give you faster data transport. And these snazzy new things that came from Cisco Systems called bridge routers that allowed you to interwork LAN technologies with WAN technologies through the mechanism of TCP/IP. As time went by, it became clear that the real value that the managed services area was adding as a provider was at the edge. And ultimately, it became more economical to transfer responsibility for the core networks into BT, certainly the frame relay network. What that meant was that as we went through generations of networking, by keeping up to date with the bridge router technology and taking into account new IP developments, the managed network services provider could take advantage on any core network that BT chose to offer customer solutions. And as you can see, as you can see, there were a number of those that came along in the late 1990s. So this greater emphasis on IP solutions led to getting into things like managed LANs, managed intranets, and managed voice over IP services. This takes us from being a managed network service provider to being a solution provider. And ultimately, this area of the business would start to become global services to look after big customers in general. So I don't think that that is an appreciably different evolution to what any of our competitors at the time would have gone through. But the main point is really that BT and other providers adopted TCP/IP and Internet product strategies at a time when it became commercially advantageous to build on expertise accumulated in the field of corporate networking. And that was supported by a willingness to engage with new technologies such as local area networks, bridge routers, and phone relay. So it was really approach over technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Again, a fascinating paper. This time it was making me think about the possibility of different pathways and different interactions between the technical standards that were coming along, like TCP/IP and SNA, what if the latter had one and not the former, and the corporate strategies and services. Our next speaker is Simon Roberry, right here, yep, who's from the